The Get On Living Safely campaign is sponsoring this podcast to remind you to keep your spending in the community. Supporting local businesses keeps food on the table for our friends and neighbors. Follow them on social media and learn more at getonlivingsafely.com. On this episode, we chatted with videographer, photographer, and animator Mike Calarco of Mike Makes. We talked growing up, his love of antique cameras, storytelling using film, and how he's been staying busy during COVID. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
Okay, so my name is Micheal Calarco. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. I lived there for 2 years, lived in Nebraska until I was 7, and moved to Wisconsin. I didn't really have friends. I didn't really hang out with people. I was the person that would be like just wandering around because I was weird. I don't know. I was weird. But I got into video and animation. I always took art classes. I took art I took as many art classes as I could throughout elementary school, given those are required, middle school. But then in high school, I took at least 5 years worth of art within the span of 4 years, along with math and science. But that was something that I always was interested in art. And it wasn't until I had a class in high school called techno art. That was back when Photoshop was just kind of getting started. It was a class where I started doing editing of photos, and I wanted to do more with that. I ended up taking a film photography class in high school too, that I ended up being able to take photos. And it wasn't until I got into my senior year that I ended up taking a video class. And I worked on some like garbage camera. I mean, in comparison to today's standards, it was a mini DV tape camera. We had a talent show, and I ended up filming a short called Cannibal, and it was spelt can and then the word nibble. Absolute garbage concept. It was, the idea was the world was being taken over by all these things that weren't being recycled, like cans, and my friend had to fight against them, and a giant battle ensued. I made an entire suit of armor out of cans, and we ended up, the ending is essentially, he bites a hole in my head, jams a thing of Mentos in it, I explode, the world is saved. Very dumb. Showed that for a talent show. It still exists on YouTube today. Not that many views. But that's kind of where I got my start. And then I ended up going to UW Stout and expanding on that and learning so much more and gaining just a lot more knowledge to where I am today.
So, speaking about that, going from this sort of canned theater, how did your company Mike Makes come about?
I've always done freelance work. I never really had a name for it at all. I was just like, hey, I'm a guy. Let me do some things. And it ended up coming about. I was talking to my girlfriend right around the time we actually started dating. And I was just like, I don't like my last name. I don't want to just be Micheal Calarco. Here's my website, whatever. And I ended up saying, like, what about Mike Makes? And she loved the idea. I liked it a lot. And I was just like, let's do that. Because what do? I just make things. I don't care. Sometimes I get paid for it. Sometimes I don't get paid for it. It's more, what do I want to do? How many things do I want to do? Like, it's whatever I'm interested in. So I ended up getting into drone photography. I ended up getting into time lapses. I ended up getting into, I've done a lot of commercial production. I've done music videos. I've done just tiny, small things like product photography. So it's kind of whatever I'm interested in, that's what I make. So that's kind of how Mike Makes came about, because I just have a plethora of random stuff.
So speaking about those different projects, some of them you're paid to do, like you said, some of them you do for free. You've worked with us directly on the garage sessions live. When you start maybe your own project or a project you're leading, how do you start that project? How do you plan to tell your story?
It's kind of a tough question. It's really dependent on the project, obviously. Say it's a music video. I'm obviously going to sit down with whoever the artist is and be like, what do you want? Do you want this to be very metaphorical, or do you want this to be literal about the lyrics? I really want to capture whoever I'm filming it for, regardless if it's free, regardless if I'm getting paid. Like, I obviously want to share the message of whoever that is. So even it reminds me of, I used to do commercials for Sleepy Hollow, and Sleepy Hollow, they have these ridiculous car ads for all their things. I did those for about 5 years. They had a Brady Bunch one. We blew up a van with a pumpkin cannon, and those, it was all just pre-planning, just starting it out saying, hey, this has to fit into 15 seconds. How do we tell a story correctly within 15 seconds? And it'd be just storyboarding. And his name is Levon, the guy at Sleepy Hollow, but everyone calls him Spanky. And that'd be something where we'd sit and talk back and forth and just want to learn how ridiculous this can get within 15 seconds. So we would always storyboard it out and be like, if it fits, it fits. Hopefully it works. So my process is a little all over the place. Like I said, it really depends on who it is and how easy it is to perform whatever they're asking for. If it's product stuff, obviously there's no story, but we want to show how great the product is. But if it's a weird story, that's just a fun thing to plan out and take the time to do.
Following you on Instagram, but also just being around you recently, you're very prolific in photography. It seems like you're kind of playful in your approach. You always have like a different camera. You're suddenly just pulling something out of your shirt, and it's not a brand new camera. It's a camera from 1942. How do all those different cameras come into play? It seems like you have a real love for those antique lenses.
So I can blame Dylan at Dylan Overhouse Productions. He started getting into film, so I started getting into film because I don't want to send my film out to be developed. That just is a whole extra thing. When he said that he was going to develop film, I was like, perfect, because this makes things easier for me. So I don't care about high quality cameras for film. I like high quality cameras. To me are something that, yes, the photo is going to be awesome. It's going to look nice, but I want the cameras that are super like old. They've been through some stuff. And so when I get a photo, you don't know what to expect. So, I mean, the first camera I started using was just a small box. It was from 1930 something and didn't know if it worked. It had a bunch of mold inside the viewfinder. You could kind of tell what you were going to get a photo of, but you still had no clue if it was even going to work. Now I think I have, for film cameras, I have 7. I think I have 3 more cameras on the way. And that's something that I just experiment with film. I just experiment with different cameras, and I'm debating on doing like a film blog of just these cameras, how they work and what they do. I'm trying to find more weirder cameras. Like currently I'm using the Nishika N8000, which takes 4 photos all at the same time. It creates GIFs essentially that back when it was made, wasn't made to take GIFs. That's not a thing. That wasn't a thing. So now with those cameras, they're becoming more popular, and you can create these GIFs where it's just one like frame in time, but there's 4 of them. So it just does a shift around a person or other things like that. And that's kind of where I'm at. I like to experiment.
So recently, do you always have a camera with you?
Yeah. If I'm in my car, I usually have at least my digital camera. If I'm on a walk, I have at least one film camera just in case. I think my photography bag always has 1 film camera and 1 digital camera at any time.
Do you kind of feel incomplete if you don't have one with you?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a disappointing day when I'm walking around and then I see something that I'm like, man, that would look great right now with film. But the odds of me being on this street at this time with whoever walking by with whatever going on is so rare that I'm like, I'm not going to be able to recreate that. So
over the past 6 months, everyone's been kind of dealing with COVID. I'm sure that's changed your life as well. What have you been up to in terms of being creative? Maybe what's next for Mike Makes?
So for me, I mean, currently like I've said before, I got into film photography again. I've recently gotten more into product photography. That's something easy to do from home. And then we've also done the garage sessions where I've partnered with you guys, and then also Dylan Overhouse Productions, just because bands are suffering right now, venues are suffering right now. It's something that is fun to do. I mean, Dylan and I had a base knowledge of what we could do, and every episode's been kind of an experiment. It's been a growing and learning process, and that's something for us that, I mean, for me, I know I love. even if the show ends up having an issue, most people at home never know that there was a thing in the background that happened. So that's kind of where I've been as well. I mean, beyond updating my website, I've just been learning web design in my free time.
So where can people find out more about you?
Anyone can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or my own website. My website's mikemakes.com. My Instagram is Mike Makes, and my Facebook is Mike Makes Lacrosse.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Locals. Subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.